Okay, we're going to get started. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's emergency snap cuts video meeting. Excuse me. It's been a long week. My name is Hannah Vlock, and I am the founder and executive director of Restoring Dignity. And with me is my co-presenter who will introduce himself and his agency, Eric.
My name is Eric Saviano with Nebraska Appleseed. I'm the program manager for food and nutrition access. Thanks for being here.
All right. Okay, so the reason that we scheduled this emergency meeting is because we are walking into a city and a statewide crisis coming up this Monday. And we all need to be prepared. So in this presentation, we are going to talk about the SNAP cuts that are happening. We are also going to talk about the larger SNAP crisis that Nebraska is facing. And then we're going to talk about how we can best respond as a city, and we will end with strategy ideas. And then at the end, we will have some time for a group discussion. I would ask that everybody please save your questions for the group discussion, or you can add them to the chat, but we will not be able to see them until after the presentation is over. This presentation is being recorded and it will be distributed for those who cannot attend. And then once we do the group discussion, we will turn off the recording. All right, let's get started. So, as many of you remember, President Trump and Congress recently passed the reconciliation bill, also known as the One Big Bill, also known as HR 1. And this new legislation includes significant cuts to SNAP. For those who are unfamiliar, SNAP stands for Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, and it was formerly known as food stamps. It provides critical food support for families making less than 165% of the federal poverty level. So this specific new legislation has a very specific focus on cutting food benefits to anyone who doesn't have a green card. This includes refugees, people approved for asylum, people with special immigrant visas or SIVs, which is what a lot of Afghans have came over with, Afghan parolees, and other people living in the U.S. lawfully, including certain immigrants who are victims of domestic violence, as well as their children and our parents, and certain survivors of labor or sex trafficking. It also includes larger SNAP changes, which will impact every state, including Nebraska. So, in the state of Nebraska, on Monday, October 20th, anyone who does not have a green card will no longer be eligible for SNAP benefits. As was mentioned previously, but I am going to say it again, these cuts that go into place on Monday include refugees, SIVs, Afghan parolees, people approved for asylum, and other people living in the U.S. lawfully, including certain immigrants who are victims of domestic violence, as well as their children or parents, and certain survivors of labor or sex trafficking. This also includes Ukrainians who the U.S. brought here after the war in Ukraine started. These groups will no longer be eligible for SNAP benefits. Proponents of the reconciliation bill claimed that it would prevent people with undocumented immigration status from accessing SNAP. However, let us be clear, people with undocumented immigration status have never been eligible for SNAP, and many people with lawful immigration statuses are already ineligible for SNAP due to program restrictions that happened in the 1990s, 1996 to be exact. So these new cuts that have been put in place are specifically targeting individuals who are legally in the United States and or who the U.S. government brought here. As a result of this new legislation, nationwide, we're going to see over 434,000 refugees and others who are legally in this country lose access to SNAP. Many people are not aware of this, but when a refugee is brought to the United States by our government, they cannot apply for a green card for a year. Once they apply, the wait times are incredibly long. Some of our local caseworkers here in Omaha are seeing application wait times of up to 2 years. For this reason, any refugee who came to the U.S. in the past 3 years will likely be impacted by these cuts. In Nebraska, people without green cards will lose their SNAP benefits starting at recertification. Every 6 months, anyone who receives SNAP benefits has to recertify. This is the state's way of making sure that a family is still eligible. Now, if a family that doesn't have green cards is up for recertification starting on October 20th, they will not be able to recertify and they will lose their SNAP benefits. For families who have recertified recently, they will keep their SNAP benefits for a full 6 months. So, for example, if a family recertified in September, their SNAP benefits will stay with them until March. And then in March, they will not be able to recertify again. So, as a city and state, we will see the full effect of these food cuts over the next 6 months. So, every month from now through April 2026, we're going to see more and more families who are unable to recertify, and they will begin losing their food assistance. Oh, I went the wrong way. Okay, here we go. So, what about people who are, let's say a baby's a US citizen or someone does have a green card in a family, can they apply for SNAP? The answer is yes, they can still apply for SNAP. However, the reconciliation bill created a new eligibility rule for these situations. So when the state calculates benefits for eligible people, they must count all income in the household, even from people who aren't eligible for SNAP. So if there's a family of six and the baby is the only US citizen and no one else in the family has green cards yet, the baby is the only one who can be applied for SNAP. However, the entire income of the house will be added up and divided by the number in that household. So for a family of six, income is divided by six. That income becomes the reported income for the baby, who will apply as a household of one for SNAP. So as a result of this new rule, many mixed status families will not qualify for SNAP or will receive very reduced benefits. So let's walk through an example. So here we are going to talk about the family of six that we were just talking about. The dad works full-time at a local meatpacking plant for $19.50 an hour. And this morning I just looked up local job descriptions on Indeed. And so these are the current wages that are showing up for these jobs. Okay, $19.50 an hour. Mom works part-time as a cleaner for $16 an hour. And together they make a gross monthly income of $4,766. This equates to $57,000 per year for this family of six. If you look at the chart there in green, you can see the level at which the family currently qualifies for SNAP. So they make under the maximum gross monthly income, they make under $5,900, and they are likely to receive between $1,000 to $1,200 in monthly SNAP benefits, which they then spend at their local grocery store. So under this new law, now only the baby is eligible for SNAP benefits because the baby is the only one who is a US citizen. All the other members of the household are waiting for their green cards to be processed, so the family can apply only for the baby. When they go to apply, DHHS will look at the entire household income and will divide it by household members. So 4,766 divided by 6. So only the baby is eligible. We multiply this number by 1, and that gets us to $794.33. This is what is determined as the monthly gross income of the infant. If we look at the chart in the red box, we can see that this monthly income, it qualifies the baby for SNAP, and the maximum that the baby can receive is $298. So this is going to be the new reality for thousands of people in Omaha. So the big question is, how many people are going to be impacted? No one has an exact number. So this is our best estimate. And again, this is all new information that we have received just as of late last week. So we are doing our best to get this information to you. If we have misspoken or something has been inaccurate, please bring it up in the group discussion to correct us. But the information we're providing here is the most accurate that we are bringing to you. Okay, so the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities reports that were about 7,000 people in Nebraska on SNAP who are also refugees and asylees. This number was calculated back in 2023, so we know that that number is higher today because we have had thousands more people resettle since 2023. Since the greater Omaha area makes up about 50% of the population of Nebraska, we can assume that approximately, it's got to be close to about 50% of all statewide projections will likely impact Omaha. So half of 7,000 is 3,500 people. When we look at Omaha's resettlement data from the past 36 months, we know that 2,763 people with families of four or larger have been resettled here. And we are using this metric of families of four or larger because households with smaller numbers usually don't qualify for SNAP. So this number of 2,763 people, it does not include secondary migrants. And secondary migrants are people who have been resettled as refugees in other places like Los Angeles or New York, but they can't afford to live there. So they move to Omaha because Omaha is more affordable and we have a lot of meat packing and factory jobs. So we know that that number has to be factored in there, although no one quite knows what that number is. So based on all of this, our organization, Restoring Dignity, is estimating that between probably 3,000 to 4,000 people from these targeted immigration groups will be impacted by these SNAP cuts. This number could be higher than that, but these are the best numbers that we have at this point. And then Eric's going to take it for the next couple slides.
Thanks, Hannah. So, Nebraska Appleseed's been monitoring. We've actually been pushing against these changes at the federal level, as you all probably know, since they were first introduced. But now that we're dealing with the fallout from this monumental change, we are doing our best to keep people informed of the changes. Um, the October 20th changes are part of larger changes that are happening in the SNAP world because of the one big bill. And I am going to walk you through a few of those changes today because they will impact the larger SNAP world as well. Uh, we're also sitting in the midst of a government shutdown that will probably impact SNAP access in November, so I will save a little bit of time to talk about that as well. But related to the changes with the one big bill, I just want to give you all a bigger picture than just this October 20th as well. This is an upcoming legislative session. We're going to have to deal with this one because states are now required to pick up additional administrative costs for SNAP. This will happen October of 2026. So this legislative session is the time that we'll have to do it. So just to run our baseline SNAP program, Nebraska is going to have to add an additional $17 million to the Nebraska program just to cover the administrative costs. The total cost of our SNAP program in state dollars right now is around $34 million. So adding 17 million to that is going to be significant. Additionally, in 2 years, there's a chance that our state will have to cover some costs of benefits based on our error rate. So this is a provision of the one big bill that varies state by state. If a state's combined error rate, their overpayments and underpayments, is above 6%, then they will have to cover a share of costs. Um, if they have it between 6 and 8%, you have to cover 5% of your state's benefits, and on up through potentially 15% of SNAP benefits in a state. But in Nebraska, that means that if we go up from our current 5.5% up past 6, then we may have to cover at least 16 million additional dollars for SNAP benefits because in our state, around $332 million gets spent each year in SNAP benefits. Um, I think from Nebraska Appleseed's point of view, this administrative cost shift is going to be the most significant challenge to come up with for this upcoming legislative year. Um, this is not to say that the immigrant changes and work requirements that we're going to talk about soon or have talked about are not significant as well, but just saving the SNAP program overall is a is on the table, like not saving it. So we want to make sure that you know the full scope of this. Hannah, can you go to the next one? So similar to this October 20th date for immigration changes and refugees being removed from the program, the state is going to implement new work requirements that they will start screening upon recertification as well. Specifically, older adults are added to new work requirements. Folks who were not previously required to are going to have to go find jobs now to maintain SNAP benefits for longer than 3 months. This new age range is 55 to 64. So now it covers from people from 18 to 64. Additionally, parents with dependents or guardians with dependents 14 and older are going to be required to work to receive food benefits. Additionally, certain exemptions are now removed from the program, which include veterans, people who are experiencing homelessness, and former foster youth who've aged out of the program. They were exempted previously. Just overall, I want to make the connection too between the SNAP program and school meals. In most cases, Omaha Public Schools is one exception, but in most cases, um, school districts allow their students to receive free or reduced price meals based on free or reduced price meal applications. One way to get those benefits automatically is through the SNAP participation. So if a family participates in SNAP, they're automatically approved for the free or reduced price meal program. Since we're losing a number of people from that program, from the SNAP program, these families are going to have to find free or reduced price meal applications. Schools are going to have to make sure that those families understand and trust the state enough to pass along their information through those. And that is how they will have to receive those meals. In general, given the climate for immigration, it's a big ask to have families put their names on papers that they didn't have to previously, just because of free meals that will likely increase the amount of unpaid meal debt and probably the hardship happening in schools. And for schools themselves, it'll be a challenge to cover those funds that cover food. All right, let's see what's next. So overall in the state, I know we estimated 7,000 Nebraskans, people living in Nebraska, leaving the program because of the immigration changes. Statewide, and with all of the implementation of those provisions I just covered, we're expecting around 17,000 people to either be removed from the program or to have their benefits reduced within the next 6 months. So the loss to retailers, the loss of SNAP benefits, we've estimated at around $30 million. And that will likely be a cost shift, not a real liquid amount of money, but there will be a cost shift of around $30 million that people were spending at SNAP and moving that to food pantries and food banks or anywhere else they can find food because they will not have that resource. Hannah?
All right, thank you, Eric. Okay, so now that we have all of this information, probably not a meeting we ever thought we'd ever have to have, but now that we're aware, we have to know what we need to do. And so the first and most important action is we have to make sure that people who are losing food access are able to get food. This is priority number one for Omaha. We cannot have families choosing between rent and food because what will happen is we are going to end up with a lot of families getting eviction notices and ending up homeless because people will choose to eat because water and food are basic necessities for human survival and shelter comes after food and we can't have this happening. So a big part of the answer is making sure that families can get food through our local food pantries who are pretty much our only resource at this point for families to get food besides getting it privately through other means, other families who might share food. So how do we do this? Step one is we get information about food pantries out to impacted people. Restoring Dignity has spent this week urgently working to get flyers made in 13 languages. We have been working with food pantries this week, and there are currently 12 pantries whose flyers have been created and translated. We actually have staff right now in the office translating these documents as this meeting is going on, and we are uploading them to our website every few minutes. And all the flyers should be done and on the website by Monday. So you can visit rdomaha.org/food to download these flyers. And then we are also asking agencies to download the flyers and add them to your websites too, so that we can get this information out to as many impacted families as possible so they know where to go get food when their SNAP benefits start turning off here soon. Additionally, on this website, we will have videos in 14 to 18 languages explaining the changes that are happening, so you can send that to impacted people who speak a language other than English. And we just got those scripts out yesterday to refugee and immigrant leaders, and those videos should be uploaded by next week. So that will be a resource as well. All right, step 2 of what we need to do. We are going to have to rally behind our pantries financially. They are about to get hit with thousands more people needing their services, and it's not just our refugee and immigrant populations impacted by this. Like Eric mentioned, the homeless, or people experiencing homelessness, excuse me, veterans, former foster youth, and others are also being impacted. Earlier this week, we did have a call with a lot of the food pantries, and they said that if you want to make the biggest impact, donating for them to buy food is the best route to go. That's because you might be able to get, for example, a large bag of rice for, let's just say, $20, $30 at a grocery store, maybe more. But when they buy wholesale, they can get that same bag for almost half that price. So for every one bag of rice that you can buy at a local store, they can buy two wholesale. So it's just a better way to stretch a dollar and to make the impact more. There are a few pantries that rely on donated food alone, but for the most part, financial giving will go the furthest. And we understand that most people probably can't financially support 12 or more food pantries a month, but we're asking everyone on this call and for you to ask people that you know to just pick one food pantry or two, maybe a pantry you've heard about or supported in the past, or one that's close to your work or home, and then just start donating $10 to $20 a month. And then faithfully do this every month. Get set up on the auto monthly giving plan. And if we can get enough people doing this, this will help us get through the first part of this crisis. So step 3 is that pantries need people to volunteer. So with all of this increased need, there will be an increased need for volunteers. And we have been working with the pantries this week and have put together a matrix grid that has QR codes and links where people can sign up to volunteer and also sign up to donate. So this is on our website right now, rdomaha.org/food, and we will send it out as an attachment after this meeting as well. And then we'll also put a form up on our website so other food pantries can join this list as well. And we'll just keep adding as people reach out. So step 4 of what we need to do is the media. We need relentless media coverage of these SNAP changes. We need to show people the uncomfortable and immoral impacts of these cuts. And in order for this law to be upended, it is going to take a tremendous push from citizens and from our media to report on what is happening. So what we need is for all agencies on this call to start calling the media to do stories. Over the upcoming weeks and months, as your clients come in and they're becoming impacted, you need to start calling the news. We need to get these stories out. Tell them they need to come interview you. And then food pantries also need to get the media involved as you start seeing an increase in your services. If you have clients who are impacted and they're willing to tell their story, we need to get them on camera. And then we also need each of you to faithfully share stories about the SNAP cuts to your social media platforms to get the word in front of people as much as possible, because media is going to play a huge role in making this crisis front and center stage for both our fellow citizens and for our elected officials. Step 5 are town halls. We need people going to every town hall and bringing this up. Okay, we have to make elected officials on every level aware of this crisis, and we have to call upon their morality. The more people that we can get talking, the more chance that change will happen. So Mayor Ewing has town halls coming up this week. They're down here at the bottom of the screen. We will share these slides with you after the presentation. So who can go? When you do go, of course, be respectful when you ask questions, but you do need to ask boldly. And so I would even say something like, hello, Mayor Ewing, or hello, whichever elected official you're at. On October 20th, refugees and Afghans who served next to U.S. troops and Ukrainians who are fleeing the war, they lost their SNAP benefits because of the reconciliation bill. So now we have thousands of people in Omaha without food access, including babies and children and the elderly. What can you do to help solve this crisis? And I think that we really have to start getting in front of everyone and asking our elected officials, what can you do to solve this crisis? I'm going to pass this on to Eric.
Yeah, I'd invite you to also consider contacting your state senator. State-wise, again, this legislative session, we are going to have to deal with finding at least $17 million to continue the SNAP program overall. We are also uh, fully aware of the challenge of feeding this group of folks. So we're trying to think about how we can legislate or support food banks or do something statewide to support the refugee and immigrant communities just that have lost SNAP because of this bill. So um, share the impact of those SNAP cuts in the refugee communities and immigrant populations. Push our state senators and legislatures to fund the gap in SNAP administrative costs, like I said, and then support those food banks and pantries as well. And federally, I just want to remind folks that all five of our federal delegation voted at every opportunity to pass the one big beautiful bill, so-called, and that included these cuts. So we do think continuing to call these five to share the impacts of these cuts is important. And then there's an opportunity to share the to email them directly through a FRAC email portal that I'm going to drop into the chat soon. There is a not introduced as of yet bill, but it is called the Restoring Food Security for American Families and Farmers Act of 2025 that those national groups are rallying support for, although it's not clear how far that will go, especially in this climate, but it is something that we want to see. Um, Hannah, I do want to talk about I don't know if we need to talk too much about it, but the shutdown, there's a chance that November benefits for SNAP are also not likely to go out if the shutdown has not ended by then. And so this is another benefits cliff that we need to be aware of. And I think the same next steps um, are probably appropriate for getting your information to support the food banks, volunteer, contact federal delegation, and try to end that shutdown as well.
Thank you, Eric. Something else that a group of us started, I think it was late last year or early this year, it's called the Fight for Refugees and Immigrants. It's just a local group. We meet every other Thursday at 1 o'clock on Zoom. We just talk about all of the stuff that's happening because there's been a lot of stuff that has happened in such a short period of time. And we also strategize about some things. I know there's a panel coming up that some of the members in the group have put together that's going to happen at Tri-Faith, I believe, Tuesday, November 4th in the evening. And I can get that flyer out to you guys too if you'd like to go to that. Just basically a discussion about what's happening and to get people thinking about this and bring awareness to these issues. So you can scan this QR code if you'd like to be part of that group or email me, hannah@rdomaha.org.
And of course, Appleseed is doing this advocacy as well as many others. If you want to funnel your advocacy through us or keep updated, feel free to follow us at our social medias or sign up for email updates using the QR or going to anyappleseed.org/subscribe. Thanks.
Okay, we're going to go into our group discussion. I'm going to stop recording, but we will send out this recording to everyone so you can watch it again or send it to people.